Hey, ho, what do you know? What makes you happy? What is happy? Anybody got any ideas? I'll leave you to think about it for a second or two. I'll be right back. Okay? You think about it. Uh, uh, Anyone got anything in mind? Well, I'll tell you a little story. You seem to like my stories. Hi. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob. You're out here to tell you a story. And what is happy? Right? My whole life, I have been Mr. Fix It. I've always been able to fix it from a child. And pretty much from birth, till I was 32, I just kind of glided through it. Meaning, I was the dude, I was the man, I was the kid, I was the lad, I was the Padawan. And I always had masters and teachers and mentors that saw in me something I had no idea I had in me. And they imparted to me many great things, and it made me more than myself. It made me, I was all of what they gave me. And all what they gave me was the ability to understand love's co creation, right? To be that or follow with faith to in every day and every way take the peace of the earth through Jesus Christ's unconditional forgiveness. Right? Now, of course, I'm a moron. I'm a human being. I'm a bag of water. I'm mud puppet. But that's just this, right? And I pretty much realized early on that I am not this. You die 7 times, you get a good idea of it. I died when I was born. I died when a nun in first grade murdered me. I died 2 years later when I was 10 in Florida. Again, the Catholic Church tried to murder me. I was surrounded by the Winged Winkies, and so I always had a guardian angel, a hero to save my butt, whether it was Dr. Black or my Aunt Gracie, or occasionally my mother or my Uncle Steve. And then I got more into the line of having a sensei, right? And because my only master, you can only serve one master, and my one master is God, God's unconditional love. That's my master. And that's what saved my butt time and time again because, I am God's lucky bastard, or, I'm not the only one. There are a number of us out there. And we're here, and why I do this show is to give you a example, to give you an experience that gives you not only the faith in God's love and Jesus's unconditional forgiveness, but in yourself that you are the best you can be by being consciously intent in being the best you can be. That's all you can be is the best you can be. You're not perfect, but you can be, you know. Don't try, be the best you can be, right? Now we're coming up on, I've been talking about the big splat now for at least 4 years. And we're coming up on it. We've been in it. It's all around us. All the stuff, 9/11, you name it. Go all the way back to, you know, Gilgamesh. Go back to Gilgamesh. You guys read that one? Yeah, that's a good story. And you know, I was never a king, but I've been a wizard, and I've had, Enkidu. I've had good friends like Enkidu, and usually your best friend is not a human being. May look like a human being, but usually not a human being. Usually, a cat or a dog or a cow or a horse or whatever your familiar is, whatever your animal totem is, that's your best friend, right? And, and an angel always got your back, and your librarian always brings you the information. Now, I've given you a lot of stories, a lot of tales, a lot of classes, a lot of explanations, and I can get caught up in stuff being Mr. Fix It, and the itinerant scholar, I can get carried away in that. And some people, that's intimidating. I'm sorry if it is, me intimidating. I don't think so. But I just wanted to drop in, and because, I kind of was up here on the guy who's about a mile from me up on his driveway. I didn't see anybody here, so I've been here looking at the news, and it's the same thing over and over again. And at the same time, we have, great all these platforms on the internet, that give us these great shows that are like Shakespeare. And that's all they are. They're just a revamping of Shakespeare, and Shakespeare just was revamping the Greeks. And the Greeks were just revamping the people who were before them, the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, you know, and other, Plato and Aristotle and Homer. They all went to other lands that they don't really kind of, Jamie, listening, Grace, yeah. And and so they don't spill the beans, like I don't spill the beans. I just tell you stories and give you things to, be hopeful about, right? Because all you can be is hopeful, right? Because if you get stuck in ego, if you get stuck in the material world, it's not going to be pretty. And now I've done it all, meaning God kept putting me into positions of doing it all, and I was always given the free will to choose. So there are many times I could have been Elon Musk or Billy Boy, Small Penis, it could have been a lot of those guys, right? It could have been, Al Pacino. Look at my little friend. I could have been a lot of that. And I tasted it and I realized, nah, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to serve love's co-creation. You And so, I've died 7 times. I'm in my 70s. Everyone's, all the medical science people are amazed that I'm still alive. And then the entities within the corporate things, they do everything they can to throw curveballs at me, and I just kind of giggle. So the other day, I was with some friends, and they took me out to a nice place, so I had a nice meal. I have no money to buy anything. How about putting something in a PayPal? That'd be nice. But it doesn't matter because I live there are all these rich people who are moving in here, and they're jealous. And they keep coming and throwing cash at me. Let me buy you out. You can live. Blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, good luck with that. And I will. As soon as God says, okay, I got something for you to do. Yeah, then I'll bail from here. because I've been here 20 years. I had 18 amazing years of being in heaven, right? And what am I going to do? Just the 2.5 years that the scum bags, and I was trying to describe my parameters, and I was measuring them. It was 1.9999 scumbags, and the guy goes, "You calling me a scumbag?" And I said, "Oh no, it's a technical term." And he said, "Huh?" I said, "Yeah, it's just like a RCH. What's that? Red cunt hair, right?" And he went, "Huh?" And I said, "And everyone has a cunt, and everyone is a cunt every now and then. You know, the word cunt, if you go back into the Greek, has nothing to do with gender specific definitions. It's more about the activity, right? Steady as she goes. Yeah. So yeah, that's me, right? I'm a mix of Captain Pike, Mr. Spock, Nurse Chapel. That's me. A few others in there too. So hammer, nail. So that's I am here as your griot to tell you a story to give you, you know, the ability to navigate yourself, right, to happiness. As our friend Jamie says, steady as she goes, steady as she goes. The ship we drive on. It just makes me sad to see people hurt themselves. And I spent most of my life trying to fix that, and it doesn't seem I can I can temporarily. Ah, so yesterday was a really sweet day. People came and took me out, tried to cheer me up. Oh, a number of my 128 godchildren got a hold of me and told me how happy that I was their father. That I did more for them than anyone else in their life. And that's why I do this show. Because I am no longer physically able to get around like I used to and to interact with the powers that be like I used to. And the internet. They allow me to go on the World Wide Web and let me serve love's co creation, God's unconditional love, and Jesus' unconditional forgiveness. Yeah, Father's Day. So it just hurts me to see people just waste their lives, you know? And I, I understand, I've been through enough to realize they're not really wasting their lives because whatever they go through, wherever they are, wherever they go, there they are, right? And they have to go, please, when I was, every time I was the dude in whatever universe I was being the dude in, God, go ahead, go for it, buddy. That's why I put you here, right? So when I was in the corporate world, making ridiculous amounts of money for just being me and not having to work really, I made more money than I ever needed each year by only working 11 weeks or even less. I actually, to live the way I do now, all I would have to do is work for about 11 hours, right? But I worked 11 weeks and I lived a extraordinarily hedonist life. Now, that wasn't a sin, right? The only sin there is when you disconnect from God's love. That's the only form of fornication, right? It's not this. It's disconnecting from love, right? And like I can try everything. Yeah, I haven't tried everything. Everything's a lot, but I've tried a lot. And it never gets its grip on me because I'm in service. You're not service. I am the slave of God's love. And when you're a slave, you can only serve one master. Only master I serve is God's love. And I don't question it. Whatever I'm put into, I don't question it. And I mean, one of the things I understand can always be worse. That's why when people, how you doing? Everything's in pain. I can barely see. I can barely breathe. I can barely move. And I can say, great, because I know it can be worse. So, and I know I'm not going anywhere until I finish what God has put me here to do. And that's exciting. I have no idea what it is because I never have, in the last 70 more years, I've never been aware. I'm aware of everything, but only in the moment. Just, that's why I can read people, right? That's why I can know what to do. That's why I know what to say right in that moment, right? Because that's one of the tools. God's unconditional. When you are God's slave, you're given a nice little toolbox, right? If you've ever hung out with any indigenous people, in their tongue, they will talk about, if you're a shaman or a whatever. Every one of those guys, a mystic man, a magician, you know, they all have a toolbox, and your tools, the tools don't make the man. The man uses the tools, and when I say man, you man, meaning forget the gender, and relatively pretty soon. I mean, while all these states are going wacko about transgendered, LGBTQ, MOUSE, all of that, human beings are on a grading scale, right? There is no, oh, that's a human being, and the rest is, the other. No, we're all our relations, and your life has nothing to do with you. It's the we in me that matters, right? We're here to be a slave to love. And love is not sex or rock and roll, or love is the commitment to be in every day and every way and bring the peace to the earth. Right. So that's, 18 minutes. Well, it's 18 minutes. Yeah. Time goes by when you're having fun. It's getting about that time when the no-see-ums are coming out and they just love me. I mean, half of all of that is no-see-ums. But it goes away. It goes away with forget medicines. I mean, I'm an herbalist and I have this nice hill that I've, capped, Colonel Sanders one day came in with his weed whacker and thought, oh, this is messy, and he took out all of the medicinal herbs. But it was quite interesting because whenever that guy does stuff like that, it always works out for me because it was like I was looking at it and said, well, everything's going to seed. It's time to harvest, and I'll just have to get in there and it's on a slope, so it faces the sun, it gets drainage. I mean, it's a perfect thing to grow these medicinal herbs. And he chopped them all down. He didn't make them up or anything. He chopped them all down. So I just went around with a little string and bundled them up and hung them upside down and dried them out. And he does that all the time. That's why I don't get upset. You know, he we make deals because he's I want to make a deal. I want to make a deal. He's like Donald Trump. The art of making a deal, and he fails at every one. Right? But it's okay by me because it always turns out because God, I am God's slave, and so God is making all Uh, yeah, comfrey paste. Yep, exactly. And I kind of go a little further. I have lots of different herbs, and I muscle test everything. Like a friend of mine jabbed himself. He was trying to pull out a big piece of metal from the earth, right? I don't know why he was trying to do this, but he jammed it up there and into his brain. And, everyone was like, oh my God, right? But for some reason, it didn't kill him, right? And so I came by, relatively soon after he did that. And he had like cleaned it off and he had a little, but it's hard to put a bandage, he's trying to wrap it around. I said, no, 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 I got this covered. And so I kind of took him over to my little patch and muscle, held him, had him hold, a thatch of this herb and that herb. And I muscle test them. And all the ones that came up, I, put them together. I made a poultice and a tonic. And I said, here, just, the tonic, put it in a glass of warm water and gargle with it and then drink it, right? And this stuff, just keep it glued on his nose, right? So his wife is a doctor, and she was like, "Oh, I have to suture this." She cleaned it out, and she said, "We'll just see what happens." Anyway, so I did that for him, and it healed straight up, right? I mean, like within 2 days, and she was amazed, right? And then within 5 days, you couldn't even tell. And he jabbed this thing straight in, like almost, popped his eyeball out like a little cherry or something. Anyway, and he's like better than new. And she's always known that. That's what she says about me. Mm. So she said, "Can you show me that?" And so I showed it to her. I showed her how to muscle test. I did all those kind of things, and she was like, "Hmm." And again, it's not me; it's God. And now these folks are really Christian God folk, right? So she was like all down with that. So, and she knows I'm Mr. Science, She's known me for a long time, and she's kind of every time I tell a story, she's over there with her rocket science super duper smartphone looking the stuff up I say. And she goes, "My God, he's right. My God, there's a picture of him, at the, So it's only people who are scared that have a problem with me, and even then, I can just talk to them to the so. So I'm not God, and I'm not this, but I follow Jesus' path, right? I know through Jesus is my path to go, right? Through Jesus is my path, right? And I do not serve. I'm not like a waiter in a restaurant. I am God's slave. I just do what God wants me to do, period. Without any question. Because I've lived long enough. Even when I was younger, I had no idea this was what was happening. It wasn't until I got to 32 and I did a number of interesting things and got myself into an interesting place, surrounded by interesting people who, had a lot of power. I mean, a lot of power, a lot more power than, let's say, Elon Musk, or a lot more power than, Joe Biden, or a lot more power than any moron you want to put a name in front of, right? Um, and these guys were that, and they wanted me to join their club, and they knew that I could, If I said, "Yeah, sure, right away, sign me up," then I wasn't the right guy. So you know, this one guy, he spent the last, good almost 30 years of his life. I was in my 60s, right, when he died, and he basically said, "I wanted you to take over this," and I realized that that's not your path. Your path was to be my student. Your path was for all these years. I was your sensei, your griot, but not your master, right? And everyone in the council kept saying, he is the one, but he doesn't seem to want to be, pick up the mantle, right? Because I was already serving one master. It wasn't going to be these guys, right? And or their temple or whatever they, you know. And so they tipped a hat to God. And again, they said, that's not his name. I said, of course I know it's not his name. It's like a fugazi. It's not the real thing. Comfrey paste. Yep. Comfrey, Golden Seal, and a few other tea tree. What else did I put in that thing? There's it kind of really goes into strongly, and it's like menthol, and it really relaxes your, in a lot of rubs, they put it in there. But they use kind of a fugazi. I mean, most anything you buy in a store is fugazi, meaning it's kind of like the old school, but they made it out of oil somehow. And that's where, alchemy, good old Rockefeller had all the oil in the world, but he only had it, lamps and a few things, and then it took him 30 years to figure out the internal combustion engine and gasoline. And but plastics, that movie when they said, the Graduate, you know, let me tell you one thing. Remember this, plastics. And that was like a harbinger because that is what most of oil is used through alchemy, and not, the kind of that I practice because my bailiwick is loves co-creation, not turning, you know, trace elements into gold. That whole thing is us. We are the gold. Our spiritus. That's our gold. We, the bag of water, is trace elements. Said there are only 10 that know the plan, apart from the 56. Yeah, of course. But the bottom line is, I'm just a lucky bastard. I've kind of been around those guys, but my place is to, I don't serve. I am God's slave, right? And people don't like that word because it means you have to give up your ego. But when I had my mystery school, basically I was teaching everyone to, get rid of their ego. I put them in a lot of situations. I mean, that's what one of my senseis, when I was at Putney, Vermont, and I helped start this ashram of healing up there at Putney. I don't know if there's a website or I bet you would dollar donut go up to alternative healing in Putney. You'll probably find 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 teachers, schools, etc. Right? But they have all derived from my sensei, right? And I was his first, I was the first one there. I was cleaning up the farm before he showed up, right? I knew he was coming, and so I cleaned up, and then, Judy showed up, and she was a big time healer slash. She was one of the first nurse practitioners. She like invented it, right, in 1960s because she had a PhD in medicine. They wouldn't let her. You know, she was brilliant. She wanted to go to medical school. They just wouldn't let her in, right, in the 50s. And so she went to nursing school. She did that, and she did a great job. Then she did, got a bachelor's degree in nursing, and then masters in nursing, and then another master's in medical procedure slash running a hospital, and then she got a PhD in alternative medicine. And went off into the place I finally went to out in Davenport, Iowa, where they teach you. I think it's the last school of that kind. It's you're a kinesiologist, and you're a bunch of other things, and it's osteopathy, right? So we went to that osteopathy school, and so that's how I got there through her. But anyway, so I got there. I just took a bus. My boss at the VA sent me. He says, my teacher, my boss's teacher, that he learned everything. He was a surgeon during World War II. He was on the Philippines, and the Japs showed up, and he didn't get caught. He ran up in the hills and was being the medic for the you know uh, guys who were coming down from the hills. So what do you call them? Guerrilla fighters. Anyway, he was there with a Filipino psychic surgeon who could just go into the body without any tools, any knives, and just pull out the bullet, the foreign matter, right? And there was a Chinese herbalist, acupuncturist, you name it, there. And my boss was a surgeon, allopathic medical modern boy, and he was up there, and he didn't have any of his toys, so he was a lone man on totem pole. He went and got the water and made the fire, and he learned from these guys for 3 years until what's his name came back, and then the Chinese. He went and met Mao. His guy, his Chinese guy, was Mao's doctor, so he got to go to China, and before China won the Civil War, but he was there for 2 years and studied there and studied with a whole, and then he went to India and studied there. So by the time he came back around 1957, he was well tutored and everything, and he was by that time he was a colonel, lieutenant colonel. By the time he was my boss, he was a bird colonel, and so he had unbelievable, street cred and bona fide, and so that's how I got into healing. And so, I told you the story before. I was just a bedpan guy. When my draft board finally caught up to me, they said, we don't trust you with a gun. I said, that's right. First gun I get, I'm going to shoot you. And the guy just looked at me. He said, no, you're doing alternative service. I said, great, sign me up. So I did. And that's how I got into VA. And that's how I got to, study for 2.5 years with my Japanese teacher. And when my boss went to Japan, when they surrendered and he went there with the army, he met this young man who was my teacher, right? And they became great friends. And then they studied in all these different places and different things. And this guy was Japanese and Swiss, really tall guy. Anyway, he was looked a little like Mr. Spock, taller, no pointed ears. And he had really black hair and he had Japanese eyes, but everything else kind of Swiss. So if you were to go online, I bet you'd find a ton of healers up there in Putney, all from this guy. And so my boss sent me up to Putney. He said, my master is going to be there, and he'll find you, you'll find him, you'll find a place, and there's a farm. This lady is donating. Her name is such and such. You get to Putney, go to the Putney general store and say, where is so and so, and they'll probably tell you how to get there. So I did, and I was at the co-op, the Putney co-op. I bet the Putney co-op is still there, and they had it upstairs where the restaurant was, and that's where Teresa. No, I forgot the name of the lady who the FBI. One day I was eating there, and the FBI showed up, and this woman's in the back. She's the cook. She jumps out the second story window, does 3 somersaults in the air, hits the ground, and runs away. She was some kind of anti-war person. But anyway, so when I got the bus, the Greyhound from New York up to Putney, I went up there and said, hey, I'm looking for such and such. And they said, oh, that lady died. But this guy kind of piped up, but I'm her neighbor and there's some guy supposed to show up. Are you that guy? I said, well, I'm one of them. It's going to be, we're going to start a school. He goes, yeah, yeah, that's what the lawyer said. Because you need to ride up there? And I said, sure. So, I got my little bag, my rucksack, my little bag of tools, and got in his truck, and we drove up there, and a big hill, way, way deep, deep. They call, why I call this place a deep green, that's what I call Vermont. And so he deeper and deeper. The only place I saw deeper green than that was the old crone's farm, the road into her farm. So anyway, we go up and we first come at his farm. He goes, "You hungry? I got some stuff at the co-op. Let's have lunch. Then I'll take you up to the farm." I said, "Oh, that sounds good to me." So I we had that, and he showed me his whole, and farmers can do anything. They can fix anything. I mean, they're my kind of people. And so his whole thing was maple syrup tapping, and he had a pretty nice big garden that he sold vegetables at the co-op at. But that his real thing was maple syrup, but he had a really nice garden. So anyway, showed me the barn. He showed me his house. He showed me the barn and the hayloft and a few other things. And he had quite the amazing pile of stuff, right? He had a building that was just full of stuff, right? And that's where he made things, fixed things. Anyway, and behind that there was a mountain, a junkyard full of cars and machines and you name it. And the ones that were pretty good, they were on pallets and covered and that's how I learned how to store things out in the woods. Right? He had things on pallets, and then you know a number of tarps over them. Anyway, so we had that, and then we went to the the old ladies who died, who left um, my sensei the farm to be turned into a healing school. And because she went to Japan, met him, and she had cancer of everything, and he cured her, and she lived another 20 years. So that's why and he wouldn't take a nickel. So she left everything she had to him. Anyway, and so, and she gave my boss as the American contact person. So that's how I ended up there. So I, you know, was the first guy there. The farmer guy's there, and we kind of go through it. And basically, there is a power line going to the barn, right? Because this place had a barn, nice big barn, and it was dry and clean, and the roof was good. It had a great hayloft without any hay on it. It was pretty cleaned out, and there was a milker, and there was a pig house, and a few other sundry buildings, and a nice farmhouse. Nice farmhouse, 2 stories with a porch all the way around, and the roof line went this, and they had a high center uh, ridge, and it was a nice place. And then it's like other farmhouses, they added on, added on, and added on. So there was the major old house, which was a nice New England, pretty big farmhouse, and then 2 wings that went off, right? And then a kind of bunkhouse. So you could stick a lot of people in this place. So anyway, I kind of was going through, and it was like the old lady, she kept a lot of crap. So the place was full of stuff, right? And not even habitable. Whereas went in the front door, it was a nice, sitting room, a kind of dining room off to this side, and the kitchen back there. And on this side was a hallway that went down to bedrooms, and another nice little sitting room, like a sunroom, right? It faced south and caught the east and west. So that little part was kind of clean. Upstairs, full of stuff. The 2 hallways with the bedrooms full of stuff, right? And funky, right? And and the plumbing, eh. And so, but the kitchen, pretty clean. Dining room, pretty clean. The sitting room, pretty nice. Had a rug, Had a couch, a couple of chairs, big fireplace with a keep, thing that you could boil water on. And in the kitchen, the stove was a wood stove. It had electric stove too, but it had a big four, six top um, thing, and that was a little funky. That needed to be cleaned out, but the electric stove was right there. It was not that old, right? I looked at it, said, might work. And in the kitchen, there was a fuse box, plug fuses, and it was nippled straight to the meter, right? So we go outside, and basically there's a meter there, but there's no ring, no lock. I just pulled the thing out, and it had the little shoes on it, and I plugged it back in, and I took my little tester and went into that, took the panel off of the fuse thing, and you know, boy, I said it's juice there, right? I go over, and the refrigerator starts going, it's trying to do its thing. I turned a little knob, and a little electric burner gets hot. I said, well, that's kind of cool. And so the kitchen, it had its own hand pump. It had its like own well, right? I kind of did that to it, and then the water kind of came up, and it was all rusty and icky, but I just kept doing it, and just not bad. And then we walked around and looked and saw that there was another meter pan over on the barn. Again, no ring, no lock. Took it off, took the meter, took the little shoes off, plugged it in, bam! So, okay, well, I have to figure that one out. And so I left the meter on the ground. It didn't burn off the shoes. Anyway, so the guy goes, well, it seems like you've got things in mind. I said, so do you know where the well is? I mean, there must be a well because it's a 60 amp thing. Well, he goes, that goes to the milk house. And he goes, that other switch over there, I think that's the well. And he goes, look, it, you know, the dead man switch is up. So you might start looking for your problem in that well. I said, thank you very much, Mr. Farmer. And his name was Bob too. You know, all the great buddies that were Mr. Fix-Its in my life were Bob. I'm Al Bob. He's Bob. Anyway, so I knew Bob the Builder. And so, what do? I go, so this guy's gonna show up. And I went into the barn. I looked around, and the halo actually had a staircase, not a ladder, but a nice staircase, right? I went up there, and it was a nice, um, you know, rug up there, and it was a nice big brass four-poster bed. The mattress was a little funked out, looked like someone died on it. Anyway, so I got it had a table and a desk and a couple lamps and a couple of outlets, and I said, well, okay, just where I'm going to live. And so then I went down, and I really, 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 really cleaned out. I started a fire in the keep. I put water in that big uh, thing and got it to a boil, and it could tip. It was really great. It could tip right on onto the floor. And I went into the where the larder is, and there was all kinds of still pretty good cleaning stuff and a brush. And so I kind of, brushed the floor, and I cleared out. There was a bathroom that seemed to be relatively okay, and I cleaned that out. And I kind of went, you know, into one of those in the one bedroom that was closest to that that toilet was you know basically not that bad. Had a bed in it, had a dresser in it with a mirror, and it had nice wallpaper from like 1948. And so I kind of brushed that out. I brought a bucket of hot water and cleaning stuff, and pretty much washed, scraped every square inch of that. and went out there in the living room and got the nicest of the easy chairs and put it there. It also had a nice fireplace in that room. Kind of looked like the master bedroom, and so cleaned up the bathroom, and then I was piddling around to see where the well was. Found that there were two wells, well for the barn and a well for that house, right? So and then I started looking in the barn and those other rooms, and there was one of the building was like a shop, right? And it had all kinds of stuff, tools but it had a lot of electric stuff. The guy must have been an electrician, right? So it had a lot of plug fuses, a lot of bar fuses, a lot of every kind of fuse you could think of. I said, well, that's good. I'm going to need those. And he had a bunch of switch. He had a bunch of stuff that whatever I needed to replace, it wasn't there, right? And when that farmer guy, Bob, left, he says, anything you need, anytime you need a hand, I'm just down the road. And he was just down the road, about 2 miles. So I said, okay. So he goes, can you ride a bicycle? I said, yeah, I can ride a bicycle. He says, I got one in my barn. I think you'll need that. You don't have a car. You can ride around it. You could easily ride to town on about this bicycle I got. And so because town is really only if you take this through the forest road, it's only about 3 miles. You take the blacktop, it's about 15 miles. So I said, okay. So I look forward to seeing. He said, I'm going to drop by later, see who shows up. Anyway, so I said, okay, Bob. And so Bob was pretty intuitive. I mean, he kept kind of knowing without knowing what was going to happen. And anyway, so I'm cleaning, and scraping and trying to make the house look really nice. And I've been there maybe, and Bob sent, not sent, but he gave me some food, some stuff out of his fridge and some of his veggies in a box and a bottle of wine. He said, I make wine, so here's a bottle of wine. And so, I had all, and he gave me a nice couple of loaves of bread. So wine and bread, with some cheese, no meats, but veggies, right? So I was trying to figure out the electric stove, and there were a couple of fry pans. I cleaned them up, and so I was like just sautéing whatever veggies he had. Because the refrigerator it looked like it was going to use some really work, so I kind of unplugged it. And it wasn't plugged in; it was actually wired straight in. So I kind of found its fuse and turned it off because it either was like I stayed in zebra or didn't get cold at all. It was like no happy medium. So I said I have to play with that. So anyway, it was getting to be I stayed receiver, so whatever I put in there, right, to keep cold the stuff he made. And so I'm cleaning and scraping and fooling around with this and that, and this cab dries up, right, and this very attractive, tallish, blonde-haired um, um, young woman got out, and it was Pat Zunick, right? And Pat was my sweetie for many, many years, where we were like brother and sister with benefits, and we could scratch each other's itch pretty good, but we didn't need, oh, you're not my boyfriend, I'm not your girlfriend. So anyway, so it was friendship, love, no, friendship and sex at first sight, right? So anyway, so she, wow, because she kind of, I said, Joe, just, she goes, you need any help, anything? I said, no, nah, let me finish what I'm doing, but you go just walk around. And I said, there's the big barn with the staircase. Go look at that staircase. And she goes, "Oh, okay." And she goes, that, and then, and I'm under the house in the kind of, ice, thing, the place to keep things cold before they got that refrigerator. And and that's where there was a pump down there. So I guess that's where this well is. So I was fussing around with that. And she kind of looked down the hole and said, hey, you need a hand? I said, well, no, no. I said, now it's time to, I said, I think I got this. And so I said, I come up I screwed the plug fuse in, threw the switch, nothing blew up. I heard the motor down there kind of go. "Roar, roar, 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 roar." And he said, "Well, we'll see if the water in the bathroom works because that pump there is goes to a well. That was probably the first well, right? This other thing is feeding water out to the rest of this whole place because there were like four bathrooms. So the one, and then you could hear it gurgling, and then you could hear the water spriddling around, and so I turned it off, and we went down and we looked what was leaking, and everything had a nice valve. You could turn it off, so turned it back on. Blah, 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 stopped. It held pressure, and that one bathroom that was for that bedroom was good to go. And there was an electric hot water heater. I said, "Oh boy, let's see if it's a real miracle." So I kind of, made sure it hadn't burnt out to the continuity. I got water to it to make, because the valve for the hot water heater was turned off, and got filled it up, didn't leak. Went upstairs, turned on the tap for the hot water in the shower and the sink. And in the kitchen, there was a tap for the hot water. I said, "So, okay." Threw the switch, nothing blew up, you know. And then I said, "It's time for lunch." So we went out, and it was right in the sun, right on that porch, table, and two nice chairs. And we had bread and cheese and some sauteed veggies that had been, you know, kind of gurgling on the electric stove, and a bottle of wine. And she cleaned all the silverware and dishes and glasses, and we were just having a fine old time. Then another cab shows up, and this guy gets out, really tall guy, bald, and except for black ponytail out, and really nice black ponytail. Kind of bald like this, and he had really nice hair, and that was Sensei, right? And he knew my name, he knew her name, and he said, he pointed at her, "You're number one, you're number two." And neither of us got upset about who was one or who was two. And he just said, "You're number one," meaning if you know, and I'm number two. And so he said, "And you will learn what that means." And we both said, and he goes, "And just before, what do we call you?" He said, "You can call me Sensei." Right? Yes, Sensei. And I've already had a sensei too, studied some martial arts. And so he's looking around, and he goes, "You've done a nice job here." I mean, the grass was growing up everywhere. Everything else was, but the house, from the driveway up the path to the steps and the porch, we cleaned everything up. Cleaned the windows. They were nice leaded glass windows, like probably from 1890, and they worked. They went up and down. Actually had screens, right? So we made sure everything kind of worked. And he's looking around, and he says, "Oh," and there was three chairs, so he sat down and we had lunch. And he just asked us who we, give us our story, right? And we went on and on and on about our story, and he smiled, and we both knew my boss, and that's how we got there. And so anyway, that's was the beginning. And then as the days rolled by, other people showed up, but you know they were all, people of notoriety, because my boss had gone to conferences and knew everybody and told people his stories. And so there were enough people who were like had PhDs and doctors and head of this department and head of that department who wanted to go check that out, right? And out of the other 8 people who showed up, um, four of them basically left within a day or two because, basically, since they said she's number one, he's number two. He will tell you what to do. And kind of, she never told anybody what to do. I was the guy who, because I was Mr. Fix It. I mean, Pat was pretty handy girl herself, right? And so anyway, so well, I run a hospital. No one's going to tell me, and they'd leave. And they said, call me a cab. And there was no phone. So there's no calling cab. He'd have to walk. So I said, there's a path over there. You can go down that, and it's only about a mile or two. Or you can walk on the road, and it'll be a 15-mile walk. Anyway, so yeah, within 2 weeks, we had our crew. There was 6 of us, right? About 10 people showed up, Pat, me, and 4 others, right? And we really had a great time. And you know, I've always loved the Aquarian that I am. I can do anything, right? And I can do everything well. That's one of my masters, one of my senseis at a young age taught me that if you learn one thing well, you can learn everything well. You use the real skill set you're learning is how to learn something well, right? So anyway, how long have we been talking? Oh, look at that, 55 minutes and 55 seconds. So anyway, that little story was just, I could have had, I got there because of the Vietnam War. I got there because instead of just bending over and letting myself be thrown into that thing, I just did what God said. I kind of hid in plain sight for about a year and a half. They finally caught up to me, realized I would be too much of a pain in the ass. So they said, okay, you do alternative service. They sent me off to first work for Vista, but, and again, I was too much of a pain in the ass. So they then sent me to Fort uh, Hamilton. No, or it starts with an H, but it's in Brooklyn. I think it's Hamilton. And that's where I met my boss, Colonel. And he sent me off to study with all these people of every kind of alternative healing. And that's how I developed my discipline as a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist, right? That's the kind of healer I am, right? And I went to school to be a kinesiologist. I got, and so I learned that in 4 months, right? And learned how to be an osteopath, in another 4 months. But the whole thing to get a degree was 4 years, right? And the guy who was head of that place said to me, he goes, Al, you learned everything you learned from us. So go off and practice, You don't need a stinking degree because within a year or so, what we do will be a thing of the past, right? So go off and practice, serve God, right? So he said, serve God. And, later on, I realized that I was a slave to God's, to love's co-creation, right? So anyway, so it's been a miracle. My whole life has been blessed, miracle, but it's been sad too. I've seen a lot of suffering. And when I see people judge other people, I mean, hey, I'm a moron. I can, if I'm a bad day, if I'm upset, I could ease into that stupidity, but I'm love's co-creation's slave. So every time I lean into that, I say, moron, what are you thinking about? And I go, oh yeah, right. Conscious intent, I am. Conscious intent, I am. Okay, I got it. Oh, okay. Conscious awareness, I am. Conscious awareness, I am. I got it. I'm seeing what it is. That's my boy. I'm going to get choked up here. But I'm going to go because it's getting a little dark and I got a few miles to get back home and the road is a little squirrely. So, hope you enjoyed that one. Again, throw something into PayPal. It would really help, right? But it doesn't matter. God's always got my back. So, but I would like to know. And, Jamie, thank you for all your uh, what do statements here. Let's read a few here. With Father's Day, Grace, Comfrey Pace. It is sad there are only 10 that know the plan, apart from the 56 perfected, of course. And I'm just a lucky bastard. I would be to meet the master. you will. True adventure. Right. Right. If you got a passport, you come see me. I've been trying to get a passport because there are a lot of people in Europe. Oh, you need to come to Europe. We'll put you up. Blah blah blah. Every time I try, there's always some bureaucrat. They want me here. So until and I'm all up for this. AI. Get me a job. Um, get me the winning. I just bought 2 lottery tickets. God wants, I'll hit it this week, and I'll come see you, Jamie. But you should come here. I have this guy who's, he loves going on the road with me, and so we can, him, you, and this other guy I know, who is an interesting guy. I've had him on the show a few times. He's a bartender, and he Mojo Fojo, minister of fun and joy. Right. I ordained him as the minister of fun, and then I told him after, because when I met him, he was a curmudgeonly, rotten kind of bartender. And I met him one day on the side of the road and said, you and your friend here, follow me. You got anything to do today? They're like, "Ah, ah, ah." I said, well, come on, follow me. Let me show you heaven. And so I brought him to the Deep Green, and they stuck around for a couple of days. And he just lives down the road. It's about 30 miles from here in Mobster Town. And so, he would come up and visit me, and I would show him different ways to meditate, different ways to breathe, different things to think about. And he is, then he got better and better and less curmudgeonly and more joyous and more fun and less all about me. And, that's when I made him the minister of fun. And he really loved being the minister of fun. And he really loved doing a shtick. And he would always kind of come and get me and take me to the bar that he was, run by mobsters. And the mobsters were kind of interesting guys. They were very aesthetic. I mean, they were paint. They did a lot of, they had a lot of money, a lot of mob money. They were laundering money big time. So they were building a lot of restaurants. And I told them all the restaurants I built in New York, and they had known them. Right? Like, oh, so Spring Natural, Ear In, uh, Stone Soup, Miracle Grill, the early Miracle Grill. What other places? Montana Palace. What else? The Odeon. Windows on the World. I worked for Restaurants Associates. I built a lot of Zooms. And anyway, so when I told the mobsters all of that, and also, that my godfather was Mike Finelli, and so anyway, but the younger one, who was like kind of running everything, because the other 2 mobsters were already in their 60s, 70s, and they just like sitting around drinking cappuccinos. Anyway, I said, you want to learn? I mean, he knew he was a pretty sharp guy. He still is a pretty sharp guy. And he's very successful, meaning he's like Midas, whatever restaurant he starts up or whatever. Right? But it's pretty easy when you're living in a really pretty place, and he owns everything. And so he has got everyone coming up there. He's got a couple golf courses and a bunch of Airbnbs and Bs, and he sold probably $40 million worth of crappy houses and condos and etc. So, but he doesn't like to talk to me because I can get it into his head. I can see what's in there and say, so you're not really happy. You're really successful, and everyone wishes they were you, but you're not too happy, are you? You got a really nice wife, you got really nice kids, you got all these girlfriends. Everyone does exactly what you say, and basically views you as a god. Not too happy, are you? So I had one conversation with him. I said, I could give you some pointers, but he saw a few of his staff, I kind of turned them sideways to be the better, being their best. Not they're perfect, but being their best, right? And the guy who's Mojef, he's written a book, right? And I got him, gave him a whole bunch of things to read, and he read them, and then he read them again, and then we talked about them, and that was like his studying. But I haven't been able to he still thinks it's about his life is about him. Now it's like him bringing happiness to everyone, and he is. He's he has become the court jester of the mobster, and that's why the mobster keeps him around. And he wrote a book about happiness. And I gave him, I read it. First he had a number of manuscripts, and then I gave him some pointers on this, that, and the other thing, and he kind of um, got something interesting. And then I said, "What you need is you need an editor now. You need to find somebody." And now, I gave you a bunch of books to read. You've read them a couple of times. Those books in them have other people's books that you should go read. So go read those books again. And when they mention somebody, you write it down and then go find that book or that person. And he did. He found a couple of people who kind of live up here because it is a pretty place so far. It's not going to last. This place is so sensitive, so that it's ooh. So, and that's when God will show me something else to do. And some rich people will give me what I want, 120 for this place. And anyway, so Mojef is, and so he called me up again. Father's Day, he wished me a happy everything, and that he says, you've helped me a great deal. Yeah, because I used to, as a good sense he does, keeps people on the path, and a lot of people, I know what I'm doing, and so he wouldn't, And what's interesting, so yes, I tell a lot of stories, I talk a good deal. But when I've got someone having a conversation in front of me, I let them speak mostly. Right? And that's why Jamie's the only one who really, gets there and makes a statement. I mean, that one there about say there are only 10 that know the plan apart from the 56 perfected, of course. So you'd think, I know what he's talking about, but you'd think the other people, the other 8 or so people who have been watching, wonder who those guys are, and might ask a question or two. I mean, that's what, a chat is about. It's about chatting, right? So, anyway, so it's time to go. It's 107 and 8 seconds. So, okay, I'm going to go. And how much juice do we have left? Oh, we're getting down to, I better get out of here.